Well, it seems that my last video, This Is How VR Dies, which used nothing more than a few lines of text and gameplay footage from a new physics-based Melee VR game, Battle Talent, has stirred the simpletons' echo chamber, all because it highlighted the complete failure of the game's core design. This summoned a herd of fanboys, NPCs, and general idiots to dogpile my comment section, defending this blatantly bad product with all the usual thoughtless, flaccid responses. A handful of these comments had semi-valid points, but most just smugly coughed up the asinine, twisted accusations and defenses you'd expect from individuals who connect their own sense of identity to a consumer product. And then there were those few others who may have, personal interests in preferring the product not be portrayed for what it actually is, so not to contradict their own public messages of hype about it. I'm going to respond to some of these comments now, with the hope of making clear my intent, even though I find it bizarre I'd even need to clarify these things, and just to bring attention to the idiocy of this entire affair. K. Carroll 10 asks, what is a purpose of this video? Again, I'm dumbfounded that this needs to be explained, but I will do so just for you. My video was to highlight how absurd it is that in a fully released product all about physics-based melee fighting using your body, that the artificial intelligence and gameplay were implemented in such a terrible, ill-fitting way. To highlight that we should be alarmed at how successful this style of play which you saw in my video is for a VR game to begin with, especially with how this game is advertised on the storefront. I aimed to rightfully mock the failure of the basic game design by showing the footage I did, lightly tapping combatants with no force or momentum, yet those taps still registering as forceful hits and even dismemberments. Do I really need to elaborate any more on why this is very bad and squandering for a VR game? Is it not obvious how it makes a mockery of VR's potential for this genre, with how poorly designed the core fundamentals are? It leaves a terrible first impression for a game that's supposed to be all about encouraging active physical fighting. There was zero genuine threat or incentive to make me take the game's premise seriously. I titled the video This Is How VR Dies because it's obvious to me that anyone with any hint of standard and expectation for quality, so not most of you who replied here it seems, would see this quality of programming as an embarrassing and laughable failure for a full commercial release on a worldwide platform, one which would only serve to further sour VR's credibility. Virtual reality deserves better than to have this low-grade asset flip mediocrity be heralded as anything more than that. This was the purpose of the video. And despite the moronic backlash from people twisting my intent, deliberately or no, I feel the video did its job. Spoiler alert! After the backlash, I repurchased and played through the game for several more hours to see how much better it supposedly got according to the comments, as my footage being from the early game, where it was apparently supposed to be this bad, sure, was the common counter-rebuttal. And to my complete unsurprise, the core gameplay remained a failure. The AI continued to be terrible and unengaging, and I could continue to regularly succeed by limply waving my hand around to kill everything. Some later enemies did get a little more difficult, but not because of better or more interesting design. It was because they just spammed slightly longer combos and had some attacks which you can't block and needed to deflect instead, but otherwise went about their scripts, oblivious to what you as a player were doing. They still never tried to defend themselves, often stayed still, letting you waggle them to death, and rarely ever encouraged any more input to defeat them than the immersion-shattering bare minimum. Larger numbers of enemies didn't help either. If one lone AI and the core gameplay fundamentally sucks, then 5 or 6 at a time only multiplies how much it sucks. Are we clear now, kids? Take Toaster Bath commented, try the final boss and then complain about difficulty. This comment is a great example of the asinine, nonsensical kind that I mentioned before. As if slogging through the entire game to get to the end boss that maybe doesn't turn off its AI when you tickle them and needs more hits than regular enemies vindicates the failure of all that came before it. Such a bizarre and stupid counterpoint. Frontways Larry wrote, "What you're seeing is the dizzy mechanic when they stand still. It starts out easy to let you learn the game, dude. Play it, don't be a buzzkill, and you'll see how the game actually plays. Also, you successfully showed how you'll die if you do nothing. Congrats on disproving your own theory on how the game takes no effort, and congrats to you, Larry, for completely missing the point. It's all still basically the tutorial you're playing. Your review on Steam says you only played for 0.5 hours when you posted this. That's like 15 to 20 minutes of gameplay after the controls, instructions and opening dialogue. Don't want to be harsh on you like this, dude, but you're bashing the years of hard work this developer without even trying to play more than an hour before making a video showing you not even trying to play it, then complaining. Thanks, Larry. Firstly, if this dizzy effect is a mechanic as you say, then 1. It's badly implemented if any damage triggers a 3-second AI shutdown, and 2. The game fails completely at conveying it, which is the game's fault for omitting the most basic of design principles for communicating intent to the player and creating a bad impression for me. I also don't trust this is a dizzy mechanic as you say. It looks and feels far more like broken and bad AI to me. Secondly, yes, nearly every game starts out easy for obvious reasons. Duh. But that doesn't excuse the game design not making me engage or use VR input properly. I'll remind you that I played on the hardest difficulty setting the entire time, and later for several more hours. I even had the good grace to test different difficulty levels just in case there is an AI bug with the hardest setting, so I wasn't being unduly unfair. And what do you mean, don't be a buzzkill? Killing what buzz, exactly? So you mean don't give a contradictory opinion to the herd? Don't show the game for what it is and shatter the illusion for everyone? Now why would you say such a thing, I wonder? It probably isn't because you, hypothetically, may have a vested interest in maintaining a certain image for a game you recently hyped on your own channel, right? A contradictory message of similar popularity to your own would certainly cause at least a few to question how genuine your portrayal of a product's experience is, and what your intent behind that might be. All hypothetical, of course, though. Thirdly, you say I played about 30 minutes prior to making my video and leaving my review. Yes, that's right. I didn't need any more than that to comprehend the low-quality presentation and poorly designed core mechanics, and use a brain cell or two to foresee how the rest of the game would play out. I was not proven wrong. What you say about my dying in the footage completely misses the point, which is your own problem, so I won't address it. And your final paragraph is the usual flaccid, trite defense, which I'll respond to in more detail from another comment coming up. Your message is better written than most of the others, which is something at least, but is still ultimately the same bleating of the herd. 2 similar comments here. The Lord God himself says, "This is just the first level. It gets harder throughout the game and becomes much more of a struggle than something like Blade and Sorcery." And Fonzie, who I've recently learned is the developer for this game, says, "I mean, this is just the first level. You should try the last level and defeat the boss." Yes, I've already mentioned before how it gets more difficult, but only in the most shallow way. The core design still sucks. The extra difficulty only meant that I needed to move around a bit more often to avoid being surrounded, and gently waggle for less time before moving out of the way or blocking the same 1 or 2 repetitive attack animations each enemy had. If you want me to engage with your game, then make me do so with good design. If I have to do mental gymnastics and suspend a huge amount of disbelief just to pretend these enemies are a threat that needs my genuine skillful engagement and finesse to overcome, and ignore the fact they're barely aware animatronics I can lightly tap to death with physics results that are completely disconnected from what I'm doing in real life, then the game design fails. You might get away with this more in a flat-screen game, but not in VR. The medium deserves much better than this. Ed2510 says, "Bro, what? You're trying to make it look as boring as possible. You're welcome to pretend that you actually need to put in any effort when playing if that floats your boat, but then, if you have to pretend so much to maintain the illusion, why bother playing the game at all? Just jump around your room fighting your own imaginary foes instead." RNHKCE writes, "I wouldn't say you successfully played or critiqued the game. Please, find a more productive angle than promoting anti-hype. This level of negativity feels toxic." I disagree. I feel I've successfully played and critiqued the game. I let the footage of the core melee mechanics, which is representative of the entire gameplay loop, speak for itself. You can't get much purer than that, eh, buddy? As for your second sentence, I will do what I feel I should. Thanks very much. If you have a suggestion, I'm all eyes. Or maybe you can put yourself in the public spotlight and show me how it's done instead. And you say my video is toxic, just for showing something for what it is when you're not pretending. What I'd say is really toxic these days is the insufferable, phony, commercially minded, disingenuous hype culture where holding standards and expectations is demonized, while the naive masses have their attention and emotions exploited with endless carrot-on-a-stick positivity, twisting them to support their own exploitation. Games for psychics, coughs out, bruh, wasn't even trying to fight. Game wasn't even trying to make me. Bun9180 wittingly writes, "Swinging the sword helps improve gameplay, by the way." Lies. No, it doesn't. Nan's Trigger writes, "Game looks very appealing visually." I disagree. And from what I've seen from other content creators, a pretty fun experience. Seems like people here are saying this is only the first level, and it looks true considering I don't see any of the enemies I've seen in other videos. Putting in bare minimum effort is going to make any game look lame, especially lack of motion in a VR game. This comment holds some merit. Putting in bare minimum effort can make anything look lame, yes. But the inverse is also true. We can make someone having a poo look epic and engaging depending on how we frame it. Just as other content creators have made this game look like you actually need to engage with genuine physical skill, finesse, and a decent understanding and proficiency of its mechanics to succeed at it. You don't. So which is right? What is true? What do we do? Then we look at the game for what it is fundamentally, what it encourages, rewards, discourages, and punishes through its mechanics, and whether we think those things succeed. Then we look at how it goes about making us engage with its design choices, and if the result of this is overwhelmingly that the player has to constantly, willingly pretend they need to engage with any meaning or skill, rather than be convinced or forced to do so by good, solid design, then the game has failed. As an aside, we also need to stop throwing the word fun around so much in online feedback, as if it's any kind of valid measure of something's quality when speaking on a global stage. It's utterly redundant and meaningless when your audience isn't familiar with your real-life personality and preferences to determine what your idea of fun is, which may be worlds apart from theirs. Next, we have an early comment which I pinned for a very specific reason. Skello9033 regurgitates, "I mean, it's a single dev project. The standards are not high for a game made by one man." I pinned this comment because I am sick to death of this cop-out sentiment being used to excuse crap-quality products. It's an easy, lazy, low-hanging fruit, self-congratulatory sentiment to justify a lack of self-respect and standards behind some faux, moralistic empathy you're only parroting because it's the trendy thing right now. A trendy thing that gets the fellow herd cheering and the seals clapping. It is not our business or responsibility to have to factor in the life story behind a product. Whether made by a team of 200 or one over 5 years or 5 months, If the end product is bad, then it is bad. It is unbelievable to me that I need to say this, but here we are. I see this ridiculous sentiment being weaponized everywhere on gaming forums to excuse and defend bad quality, and it's having a knock-on effect of permitting our standards to sink lower and lower. Empathy taken too far can become a destructive, stifling force, and this is exactly what we are seeing with its constant use in the form expressed here. Companies and individuals use and abuse this call to empathy constantly by conscripting naive NPCs like you to unite and train each other under a community blanket, then have you go forth to stomp on any heathens who dare express critique, no matter how valid, under the banner of your infallible moral virtue of empathy, often accompanied with the mantra, "Do you know how hard X, Y, and Z is to do?" And who would dare stand against that seemingly pure, benevolent, virtuous expression in a crowd of anonymous, faceless, voiceless, abstracted text warriors ready to publicly shame you for stepping out of line? No matter how much a pathetic sap the person shaming you behind that keyboard may be in reality, that you'd never normally take seriously, you have no way of knowing. And think about it. Anonymous text forums are the perfect environment for these kinds of standardless, conceited, naive, misguided, or insipid people to gather together and thrive in, isn't it? All these excuses are doing is promoting the very observable decline of product quality and fostering a sentiment of taboo toward people who actually hold standards and principles in life. We need to stop perpetuating its validation with our complacent silence and start pushing back. Else we'll continue to see nothing but more decline everywhere if these bad actors remain center stage. SquidIn 9347 says, "I totally understand what you're getting at here, considering you can defeat a lot of the first enemies just by walking at them with a sharp stick. Still, half the fun in this game is done by putting effort into your strikes to get those satisfying cuts and stabs. Either you were just doing that for the review to prove how easy it can get, or you just didn't put much effort into this at all. Then again, the fact you didn't put much effort into this at all speaks volumes about the beginner levels, and maybe the dev could improve upon that AI to be more challenging." Someone who actually gets what I was going for here, but I'll stress again that I shouldn't have to be pretending so hard here. Make me earn success and reward through requiring skill and mastery, especially in VR, where, with good design, the levels of satisfaction to be had from this process could be beyond anything flat screen can offer. This is not some revolutionary or alien concept I'm proposing here. It's Game Design 101. The foundational motivation for why we even engage in things like play to develop our skills and feel gratification. The one and only, prolific on nearly every Steam VR game review page, Mr. Experienced on the MetaQuest 2 himself, Fast Lawyer, exclaims, "This is not a review, man. Honestly, you can call it initial impressions, but it's not a review. I called my video initial impressions and I put more time and effort into that video than this effort. I don't call my video a review unless I have beaten it or put many hours into it. You either take pride in your videos or you don't." Well, Mr. Fast Lawyer, we can play fast and loose with the word review here, especially these days. I feel that its usage in the description, combined with the video title and presentation, was clear in its irony and satire, but that seems to have been lost on you and many others, so what else can I say? I watched some of your impressions video to prepare for this response, and you definitely put more time in initially, sure, but more effort? Not so sure. There was no structure to your video beyond the intro or any editing to speak of, nor much attempt to be informative from what I saw. Just you verbalizing what the visuals already plainly showed us. Also, you say your video is not a review and wouldn't call it one unless putting a lot of hours in or finishing it first. yet you label the video as a review on your Steam page review. And you definitely haven't finished it or played for many hours. I'd wager you haven't played it since recording and gotten no further than I have now. So, if we are being pedantic here, you might want to remain true to your word and correct that, eh? Someone once said, you either take pride in your videos, or you don't. Ponk1 vomits up. If you played this game back when it was only available through Quest Labs, you'd see how far this game's come. You're not even playing it. Compared to how this game was then, it's a major step up, even with bugs still present. It went from being a small room, blah blah blah, Blunder's having yada yada yada. Even if the game flips assets, it's still a decent game. Besides, it's a single dev project. You can't just put the guy down like that. Hell, the game has mod support. Yeah. So your counterpoint is that the game has gone through a form of development, having less stuff before, and now has more because it developed? And to top off this gem of a comment, the flaccid, only a single dev excuse we've already discussed. Oh, and it has mod support. Wow, truly remarkable. This is another one of those laughable defenses often used to justify lacking content and quality. Quintessential NPC comment right here, personifying the mindset I've mentioned before. Second to last comment now, and this is one of the few in my favour, and quite frankly, steals the show with the bombshell point he makes. The Baldric swoops in and writes into a reply thread, "What are all these responses? It has great sword physics, actually. Bruh. H3VR does a far better job at turning movements into effective strikes, where you actually swing in order to deal damage or you'll just bounce off. And that's a gun sim." An absolutely fantastic point and a fatal blow against this game. I only wish I had thought to show that comparison in my original video. It would have been amazing and even more indefensible. Hats off to you, Baldric. A fantastic comment. And for the last comment, Chunko.Harvester slides in with a smug half-smirk on his face, delivering the ultimate succinct gotcha message to rule them all. Hehe, this is how a YouTube channel dies. We shall see. The irony of this response video and all the effort I've put into scripting, structuring, and elaborating in more detail is that it probably won't get anywhere near the views or reach most of those who commented before. Because, despite their accusations, misrepresentation, and twisting of my intent, they won't be interested in an actual dialogue. These people don't want to be challenged or have their horizons broadened. These types don't have the attention span or openness for that. All they wanted, all they needed, was the easiest, safest way to add their imaginary scent to the dog pile, prove to themselves that they exist within a group, then go about their usual NPC scripts. Nuance be damned, big picture be damned. For those who did stay with me until now for whatever reason, whether just to continue twisting my meaning to fit the narrative in your mind you've locked me into, or if you're someone who's just along for the ride and having fun with the drama, or someone who's morbidly invested in how I'd respond to all this, or whether you're someone who's genuinely interested in an expanded dialogue, I hope you've gotten what you came for. In the end, doing my best to set aside ego, I do not feel this obnoxious barrage of vitriol, and my extra time with the game as a result because of it, has refuted my original point. The footage and the comments speak for themselves. If we continue this behavior of demonizing each other for expressing a desire for standards, while, at the same time, evangelizing and defending low-quality, mediocre VR software design that fundamentally fails to use the tech properly, then guess what? We'll keep getting more of that crap. Until, eventually, the industry cannibalizes itself. Our public actions, and lack of, send a message to developers and companies that it's okay to keep lowering quality standards more and more because bad actors like you will protect them. Your mind-boggling reactions to my video justifying and defending this trash standard has only strengthened my original point. This is how VR dies.